Okay, this is number 3, final, and I want to get it all on one video. And so what I did is I actually worked it out ahead of time, and then I'm going to talk through it. I know that's not necessarily the best way to do it, but here's the thing. I think this is the type of question that they're going to ask on the exam. I really do. I really think this is. For obvious reasons, I kind of came up with this conclusion before I saw the 2 questions that they put up, but this was one of the 2 questions on the practice test that they gave you. So I do think this is going to be it. Now let's talk about it. I want to talk about a few things before we start. One of the questions that one of the things I think is really important to get. The other is not important to totally understand, but so you understand why they did what they did. First of all, you're going to need to find the integral. So you're going to have to find the integral of that triangle. This is 1, 2, and I'm going to call this one 3 and 4. We're going to need the integral from -2 to 5 at some point to answer the larger question, -6 to 5. Notice the graph only goes to -2, so they're telling you -6 to 5, the whole integral is 7, so you can figure out the integral from -2 to 5, and then that way you can figure out what the integral that you're not looking at from -6 to 2. So the first question, you're supposed to, again, it's kind of a weird question, right? You have to find the integral from -6 to -2, which you don't see. It's not there. You literally don't see it. And they're telling you if you go from -6 to 5, it's 7. So what you can do is you can figure out the integral from -2 to 5. So that means you can figure out the 6 to -2, which is the question that they're actually asking. Because you can say -6 to 2 plus -2 to 5, because we know -6 to 5 is 7. Now, again, the couple of things to keep in mind. Obviously, we can figure out the area of those 3 triangles, and we'll do that in a minute. And that's relatively straightforward. But what's not straightforward is that area right there. What you want to do to find that area is you want to realize that area that's a quarter of a circle, right? That's a quarter of a circle. And a quarter of a circle is 1/4 pi r squared. If r is 3, then it's 1/4 3 squared, which is 9. So 9 pi over 4. Now, that area, that's that area. What we want is that area there. But this is a square. And that square is, the distance here is 2 to 5. The height is 3. So it's 3 times 3, which is 9. So you can actually figure out that region is 9 minus 9 pi over 4. And I think that might have been like the hard part for a lot of students, was like, how the hell did they come up with that 9 pi over 4 thing, right? So, so that 4th region here is 9, the square, minus the circle. Now, you don't need to know this, but I just want you to, this is just a Petersism. This isn't really anything to the test. They tell you that 3 goes to the point 3 minus root 5, and you need that later in the question. You could actually figure that out if you had to, but you don't. They're not going to, keep in mind, what I'm about to tell you now is just, where did they get that number? They gave it to you, so you don't need to actually notice. Equation of a circle. And then they tell you x is 3, so I put the 3 in, and you can see that y minus 3 has to be plus or minus root 5, but we don't want the plus, we want the minus on it, so you can see that y has to be 3 minus root 5. Now don't worry about the red. The green is the important one right now, is that you need to realize that 9 minus 9 pi over 4, because you'd have to figure that out on the test. The red, which we're going to use like later on in the question, I think in question B, we're going to use that, but they give it to you. They tell you what it is at 3. But it's just because of where the point would have to be, given that you have that quarter of a circle there. Okay, so let's look at the question. Now that so the area of that first rectangle is, base times height, which is 1 times 1 times a half, so you get a half. This one here is 3 halves, because it crosses, the slope here is 2. It goes over 2 up 4. So it goes from -1 up to 3, so the slope is 2. So if you go over 1, you're going to go up 2, so that's going to cross at a half. So that makes this distance 3 halves. So 1/2 times 3 halves times 1, I kind of did the scratch word here for that, is 3/4, but it's negative because that second region is below. And then the third one there is, again, 3 halves times 3. 3 halves times, I kind of put it in a weird order here, I apologize. Base times height times a half. And then the halves cancel, or so you get 9/4. So the first region, 1, is a half. The second region, the area is 3/4, but we're subtracting because it's below. And then we get 9/4. And then, of course, the fourth area is the one that probably was the stumbling block for a lot of students, was that part of the circle, which is 9 minus 9 pi over 4. So you do the work, and you get, if you work out the fraction here, you get 11 minus 9 pi over 4. Okay, just how to get that? 9 minus 3 is 6/4. 6/4 reduces to 3 halves. 3 halves plus 1/2 is 2. 2 plus 9 is 11. So that's the integral from -2 to 5. Now we know if we go all the way from -6 to 5, it adds up to 7. But we know that integral is 11 minus 9 pi over 4. So we're going to move that over to the other side. And then you get 7 minus 11, which is -4. And then a double negative makes that positive. So this integral here is -4 plus 9 pi over 4. Again, this is the question that was asked last year. I expect this to be, there were 6 free response questions. I'm guessing it'll look like this question. So just be prepared for something funky. I thought that was challenging. And if you look at the one I gave you, the one I did, I made it a cosine wave from 0 to 1, okay, that you have to do by hand. I think there's going to be an integral that they're going to have to actually do an integral of, like, integral of cosine or integral of x squared or something like that, right? Okay, so the second question, they literally give you, hey, do this integral. It's not that hard. You just got to plug all the crap in. Okay, look how we wrote it though. 2 times the integral of 3 to 5 of f prime plus the integral of 3 to 5 of 4. Broke it up into 2 integrals there. This one you're going to do by fundamental theorem. The antiderivative of f prime is f. Don't forget the 2. And then this one you're going to do old-fashioned. This is kind of like what I think this is going to be on this question for one of them. It's not hard, right? The antiderivative of 4 is just 4x from 3 to 5. Now, f of 5, remember, f is that graph there, right? So f of 5 is literally 0. And then they told you what f of 3 was. That's why they had to tell you that, right? They didn't want to make you have to actually grind out the whole circle equation. So that's where they got that equation from. And then here, 5 times 4 is 20, 3 times 4 is 12, so you get 8. You distribute it in here, you get -6 plus 2 root 5 plus 8. Obviously, 8 minus 6 is 2, and then that's where you get the 2 plus 2 root 5. The C question, find the absolute max and min. Now, we know how to do that, right? The absolute max and min is going to be when the derivative, if g is the integral here. And I think they're going to ask this question on the test, and you probably noticed that I made you do this on the practice AP exam that I gave you. Is the derivative of g is f, right? So we want to make, obviously that means g prime is f. So notice you have a critical number there and a critical number there, right? Because that's what critical numbers are, right? When the derivative is 0. Well, it's not really when the derivative is 0, it's when it changes signs, but it just changes signs a lot at 0. Not all the time, but could turn around. But anyway, so at a half and a negative half are the critical numbers. Now, put a little asterisk on the fourth one. I'm going to calculate all 4 because that's what I do out of habit, right? That's my general way of doing things. I take the antiderivative of, I calculate the endpoints and the critical numbers. You don't have to do this one, and they would give you credit on the AP exam because that's a relative min because it goes from negative to positive, not positive to negative. Since we're not looking for the min, we can be pretty certain this isn't going to be the right answer. Matter of fact, I think it turns out to be the absolute min. Anyway, so now the -2 is 0, right? Because obviously, if you put integrate from -2 to -2, you get g of -2 minus g of -2, which is obviously 0. You're not integrating over anything. The 5, we did. Luckily for us, we did the integral from -2 to 5. It took us a fair amount of time, but we already did it. And that's pretty common on the test. They often will give you the sum of them, either the critical numbers or the endpoints. Now the -1/2, so you just got to integrate literally from -2 to -1/2. Whoa, hold on. I did the integral wrong. Hold on, I did that wrong. Oh, because this isn't -1/2, this is -1. I am so sorry. You guys, this is -1. Oops. So that literally integrated from there to there. That's it, right? So that is just 1 times 1/2. I don't know why I had a brainstorm on that. There's that -1. This is 1 to the half. So anyway, so the area of that rectangle, which is the integral from, it's not that bad. Then the next integral is to integrate from here to here. That one was 1/2. This one we calculated as -3/4, so that makes the two of them 1/2 minus 3/4 is -1/4. Now you didn't have to do that one, but that's what you want to do. And then of course this is going to be the biggest one. Now you might have to put that there to be convinced it's bigger than 1/2. You might have to put that in the calculator and get a number. Let me, just for shits and giggles, let's do that. Okay. Just to make sure that I'm pretty sure it is. It's 3.9. Just making sure that that's bigger. Now I kind of did this in my head. I said 9 times 3 is 27 divided by 4 is about 7. 11 minus 7 is about 4. And what does it turn out to be? It's 3.9, right? So again, just how I did it is I called that 3 just for approximation, not pi. I called it 3. 27 is pretty close to 28, so I divided by 4 and I got 7. 11 minus, so I mean, in my head I kind of knew it was bigger, but the biggest one. But if you need to use the calculator, since you're allowed a calculator. The last question is kind of weird because I assumed it was going to be a L'Hopital's rule, but it's not. It's just a straight, put the 1 in. Bad question in my opinion. There's no real, well, actually, I apologize. There's a little bit of calculus here, but this is an unusual question. Normally you get 0 over 0, then you have to do L'Hopital's rule. And I was a little panicked because I'm like, oh my God, this would be a nightmare if we had to use L'Hopital's rule, but we don't. So you literally on this one here, let me just move this over here just for the, in this here. You put the 1 in, you get 10 to the 1, which is 10. Put the 1 in here, 1 in here, and 1 here. Now you do have to know the inverse, remember how you do inverse tangent. When is the tangent going to be 1? At pi over 4. You could also use your calculator to do inverse tangent of 1 and get pi over 4. It'll give you a decimal there, so be careful. And then, now, here's the calculus part. This is the only calculus part in my opinion. Well, not limit itself as calculus, but the only real calculus is f of 1. At 1, remember we already determined that slope was 2. So if this is f, then the slope there is 2, and the slope is the derivative. That's a calculus idea, I get that. So that's how we get 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 10 minus 6 is 4. 1 minus, f of 1, you have to know that, you have to calculate that f of 1 is 1. That's a function value, not really a derivative, so anyways. So then you get 4 over 1 minus pi over 4. Again, my reason for reworking out is my wife is doing her class later today, and she put that up last night, and I didn't want to erase it. So I wanted to make sure I could fit everything on the board for this question. I think this is an important one to make sure you understand. Okay, and then as I said before, I posted like 5 or 6 of these types of questions. Because I expect it. Now, who knows what the hell is going to happen tomorrow. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of make a big deal about 3 in its entirety. Some of you asked for certain parts, not all of it, but I just wanted to kind of cover the whole thing. Okay,